Meet Jack Aljeo. He's returned from volunteering in Ghana in 2018. He's on his way to meet Chris Tipple, one of VSO's first ever volunteers to work in the country, who went to Ghana with VSO back in 1958. Both left at 18 years old, but with 60 years apart, we found they had more in common than you might expect.
The idea of working overseas was certainly not for people just leaving school. That was very strange. I saw it as a very exciting opportunity to see something of the world beyond the shores of Britain. I had never been outside the country before I stepped on the plane to fly to Accra, so there you are.
Whenever I think back to Ghana, I just see flashing red and blue and yellow, and it's so colourful and vivid in my mind.
Well, we were teaching English, obviously, and our main qualification was that we spoke the language. Because we hadn't had any teaching experience, obviously not. We were straight from school, from sixth form. And so we would find ourselves teaching. I was teaching in a school in Akrapong, which is about 40 miles, I think, north of Accra, in the hills. It may sound very challenging to go out into another country and start teaching English in never having done it before, but it all really fell into place very easily because they were so keen and enthusiastic.
A lot of the clubs that we led when we were there had previously been started by volunteers, and we had a few different clubs. The clubs that were there beforehand were Health Club, Reading Club and Girls Club. A club that we started when we were there was rugby. So when you get there, you look at what the previous cycles did. You can work on that, you can make up your new things, your own things.
35,000 volunteers like Jack have volunteered with the ICS Youth Programme since it began in 2011. They've helped to mobilise thousands more young people to volunteer. But why do their voices matter?
Being young, I've not had much experience in livelihood, whereas I felt like education I'm fresh out of, I can bring that perspective. And if these kids are enjoying themselves, they'll stay in education for longer.
The young people are the future, so it's really, really important that we should try and allow and enable young people to have that experience.
When Chris flew to Ghana in 1958, he left with nothing more than a few anecdotes. 60 years later, ICS volunteers like Jack are fully trained and briefed before they leave and spend their time volunteering paired with the local counterpart to help them integrate with the local community.
I'd heard from previous volunteers that you become best friends with your counterpart, and I always presumed that was just what they said. But it's so true. Like you form a bond because you spend every day with this person. It also helped massively with the culture shock.
Interesting you should say that, because of course in my case that wasn't an option. VSO really as an organisation barely existed, and the counterpart scheme, for instance, which is so valuable, a part of present-day VSO, just didn't exist.
After returning back to the UK, Chris began a 40-year career in education that would lead him to become Director of Education for Northumberland County Council, while Jack, now at university, is looking ahead to a future of volunteering.
One thing that really did influence me was the fact of volunteering as opposed to education. It was the idea that I want to work in a service orientated type of way. I was keen on the service dimension of things, and that led me very much into teaching. During that time, I obviously drew heavily on my experiences in Ghana. It was valuable not only in terms of subject matter, but also skills and techniques.
I definitely want to follow on with more volunteering. The cultures that I experienced in Ghana have made like an impact on what I want to do in the future, because I thought those cultures were so interesting, the people were so lovely and positive, that I definitely want to go back.
With 60 years between their volunteering placements, we asked Chris and Jack how different they felt their experiences were, and discovered that VSO's belief in young people remains unchanged.
I think from your experience, I learned mainly that the essential qualities of VSO have not changed in 60 years. You put your own life in perspective by going, and would apply to any volunteer. Any volunteer who goes out to Ghana or any other part of the world and sees life which is so different from what we're used to and accustomed, recognises, their own place in life when they get back so much more clearly than they would otherwise do.
I feel like VSO is a great opportunity for young people to experience the world, experience volunteering in a safe way. I feel like everyone has something to input.
I think that contribution to youth means that hopefully over time the world will become a place in which people understand each other better.